Gold badges gleamed under the sun, flashing against the endless rows of white marble headstones. In that clash of symbols, Marcus Hill's dark skin and ceremonial uniform stood out like a challenge. He wasn't just guarding the tomb, he was carrying a weight that some people refused to see. The officer stepped past the rope line, his polished boots grinding against sacred stone. With one flick of his wrist, the handcuffs snapped open, a sound that turned heads faster than any shout. Mothers pulled their children back. Veterans straightened, jaws locked. Marcus did not move. His rifle stayed balanced, his boots rooted. He had fought overseas, yet here at home he was being treated like an intruder. The officer leaned closer, smirk curling. "You don't belong here." The insult hung heavy, but the steel in Marcus's silence spoke louder. The handcuffs dangled, gleaming in the sun like chains from another century. Gasps swirled through the air, but the officer acted as if the crowd didn't exist. He pressed closer, voice sharp enough to slice through the solemn hush. "Men like you stand here because no one trusted you on the front lines." The sentence struck with the sting of history. Phones tilted upward, recording every second. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't break formation. His chest rose and fell in measured rhythm, each breath an act of defiance. Inside, a memory clawed back, the face of a comrade, another black soldier, cuffed by police during leave. He had fought beside him in war, only to see him humiliated in peace. The weight of that memory pulsed heavier than the rifle on his shoulder. The officer shifted, trying to force Marcus's wrist down. A veteran in the crowd clenched his metal, whispering a creed that only a few nearby heard. The whispers rippled, weaving through the murmurs like fire through dry grass. The humiliation was no longer private, it belonged to everyone watching. Marcus could feel the sting of sweat beneath his cap, his grip steady on the rifle. The officer leaned closer, taunting again, "Say something. Or are you just a statue dressed in blue?" He didn't. Not yet. And that pause was unbearable. Even the wind through the trees seemed to stop, waiting. The officer snapped the cuffs harder against his wrist, the steel biting into skin. The crowd's anger boiled, mothers clutching children, fathers muttering curses, phones trembling in their hands. For Marcus, every second became a test, of discipline, of dignity, of whether silence could hold longer than hate. What he did next would decide if this moment shattered into disgrace, or became something no one there would ever forget. The metal pressed deeper into Marcus's skin, red marks forming beneath the steel. The officer grinned, convinced that the silence meant victory. Around them, the crowd buzzed with unease, phones raised, whispers tangled with anger. Children asked questions their parents didn't want to answer. Then Marcus moved. Not a lunge, not resistance, just a single step forward. His boot struck the stone with the force of a drumbeat. The sound ricocheted across the memorial, drawing every gaze back to him. The officer's smirk faltered, but he tightened his grip. Marcus lifted his chin. His voice carried like it had been trained on parade grounds and battlefields. 21 steps. 21 seconds. For those who gave everything. He wasn't speaking to the officer, he was speaking to the tomb, to the fallen, to the generations watching. The words hit harder than any shout. Veterans in the back straightened to attention. A woman in the front row dabbed at her eyes. Even the children fell quiet. The officer, still gripping the cuffs, looked around as if suddenly aware of how many cameras had captured the moment. "Behind me," Marcus said, his tone steady, "lie men and women who bled so we could stand here. You will not disgrace them." The officer tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked, betraying the tremor underneath. The handcuffs clattered against Marcus's wrist again, but the sound no longer belonged to him. The crowd had claimed it. Someone shouted from the rows, a veteran's voice, "He's earned that post more than any of us." Applause erupted, rolling through the crowd like thunder. The officer froze, caught between his own arrogance and the tide of judgment surging around him. Marcus did not flinch. He didn't need to. His presence had become the judgment. The officer's fingers trembled on the cuffs. For the first time, his grip slipped, not because Marcus fought him, but because the crowd had turned. Phones no longer hovered quietly, they zoomed in, broadcasting every detail live. Mothers whispered prayers, veterans saluted in unison, and the tide of respect shifted squarely toward the guard in chains. A man in the back stepped forward, his chest heavy with medals. He raised his voice, clear and unwavering, "I fought in '68. He fights every day." The word struck the officer harder than any shove. Murmurs surged into open outrage, the public now bearing witness not just to an insult, but to a violation of sacred duty. The officer pulled back slightly, his confidence leaking away. He scanned the crowd, expecting support, but found only stern faces. A child asked, "Why is the soldier arrested?" and the mother's silence was heavier than a verdict. Marcus remained steady, cuffs biting, rifle held upright. His stillness was no longer weakness, it was proof. Proof of training, of honor, of a discipline the officer could never touch. When the officer finally let go, the cuffs clattered against stone, a hollow sound that echoed like defeat. He stumbled back, eyes darting as if the weight of history itself had cornered him. The applause that followed wasn't loud at first. It grew, clapping hands, murmured thanks, until the entire crowd stood united. And in that rising noise, the officer's power dissolved. The officer lingered at the edge of the rope, his badge gleaming but his voice gone. No one defended him now. A woman stepped forward, her hand clutching a folded flag against her chest. Her son had been buried here months before. Tears streaked her face as she whispered, "Thank you." She wasn't speaking to the officer. She was speaking to Marcus. He gave no reply, only adjusted his stance, heels clicking back into perfect alignment. The mark of the cuffs still circled his wrist, but his rifle never wavered. The crowd stayed quiet, as though the memorial itself demanded reverence. The officer turned away, shoulders hunched, swallowed by the sea of stares. His authority had slipped through his fingers, not because of a struggle, but because truth had stood taller than power. As the guard resumed his 21 steps, the applause did not return. Instead, silence blanketed the grounds, a silence filled with memory, sacrifice, and the weight of lives given. And in that silence, every witness carried home the same lesson: honor is not claimed by force, but revealed in presence. Under the summer sun at Arlington, one man's silence weighed heavier than every insult thrown at him. Marcus did not answer with fists or fury, but with the steadiness of a soldier who had already given more than most people could imagine. That is the deeper lesson of this story. True power is not about the authority to shout, restrain, or control. It lies in the ability to carry yourself with honor even when others try to strip it away. The officer left diminished, but Marcus remained whole, because dignity cannot be chained, and respect cannot be forced. For those watching, it was a reminder that racial injustice does not define worth, actions do. Carry that with you the next time you witness someone being judged unfairly. And if this story moved you, add your voice in the comments, share it, and subscribe for more stories that challenge, inspire, and reveal truth.